Hey, it's Friday afternoon in East Lansing. Jim Comparoni, SpartanMag.com, SpartanMag Live here at the YouTube channel. Come on in. Let's gather around. Usually we do this on a Monday night or a Tuesday night, doing it on a Friday afternoon about 1 o'clock Eastern Time, noon hour for those of you in Chicago, the Central Time Zone. Come on in, ask some questions. We really appreciate all the activity we've gotten over the years, or over the last few weeks on Monday and Tuesday nights. Let's see how this goes on a work day. It's a Friday. It's a casual Friday. Hopefully, you're still getting some work done if you're at work. If we are causing you to not get work done or not get work finished, not finish your work on Friday, uh, you know, I guess it's my fault. Apologize about that, but maybe it's your own fault too. But that's good. We like it that way, right? Come on in. We got some questions. Some of you that are subscribers at SpartanMag.com have posted some questions over at SpartanMag.com, the Underground Bunker message board. I invited subscribers, maggers, to go ahead and post some questions over there at SpartanMag.com. We will field those questions, have about 19 or 20 of them. Not sure if we will have time to get to all of them today, but we will get to some of them. I'm going to adjust things there a little bit. I don't know if that's better or not, but we're casual. We're working with it like we normally do. And we have a lot of fun with all you guys. Go ahead and ask some questions in the chat area. We will get to those live also. So, anyway, big news for Michigan State this week, as you all know. Let me adjust my microphone here a little bit. Mel Tucker finishing his staff. Officially, I don't think it's finished yet as we record this. Scotty Hazelton has not been officially announced as the defensive coordinator yet, but all indications suggest that that's going to be the case. Like we reported last night at SpartanMag.com, just dotting some I's, crossing some T's, and that should become official real soon, unless there's some sort of change of heart late, which I don't anticipate being the case. Michigan State going out strong with a strong offer for Scotty Hazelton. And according to my sources, the offer is going to exceed. It's going to get into seven figures. So Michigan State has now become one of these programs that goes out coach hunting, coach poaching, as it were. In recent years, Michigan State fans and observers have been a little bit concerned back when Pat Narduzzi was defensive coordinator that schools from the SEC at that point were the schools that were handing out $800,000, $900,000, $1 million packages. Now that's up to $2 million plus for coordinators in the SEC. Michigan State, when they had Pat Narduzzi, gave him a really strong contract at the time, upwards of $800,000, $900,000 to remain defensive coordinator. Pete Secchio was a big donor in making that happen, but eventually University of Pittsburgh came calling. Narduzzi moved on to become head coach at Pittsburgh. In the meantime, Mike Tressel had a really good year as a defensive coordinator in 2018, and schools came after him. Michigan State managed to hold on to him, paying him less money than others were offering. At that point, Tressel wanted to remain with Mark D'Antonio out of loyalty, and that served the staff well in a lot of ways for a long time. So now Mel Tucker, who was defensive coordinator at Georgia, of course, defensive coordinator in the NFL as well, is the head coach at Michigan State now. And he sought defensive coordinators. We will get into that later. Settled on Scotty Hazelton. Michigan State with more poundage in the coffers these days, more money to go after assistant coaches, as it's been reported, upwards of $6 million, maybe more, earmarked for the coaching staff, assistant coaches. And Mark D'Antonio had a lot to do with fundraising to accumulate and grow that type of money for what he expected to be his staff. As it turns out, he did a lot of that fundraising last year prior to the season with no intentions of retiring. But with the way the season went, decided now was the time to retire for various reasons. So that money that D'Antonio helped to raise relayed to the Mel Tucker staff, and Tucker able to go out, offer, according to my sources, seven figures for Scotty Hazelton. So big doings with Michigan State football right now, the last 2 or 3 weeks, the last 5 weeks, the entire month of February, actually, after D'Antonio's retirement and then the hunt for a new coach, which we covered extensively in real time at SpartanMag.com. And then once Mel Tucker was hired, then the attention turned to his hiring of a staff, recruiting in the meantime, and now, judging by some of the questions that we're getting here, a lot of attention, a lot of subscribers want to know what's next with recruiting. Michigan State basketball, huge game tomorrow night, Saturday night in Maryland. College game day, Michigan State versus Maryland for the second time in 3 weeks. Huge opportunity for Michigan State. Would have been an even bigger opportunity had Maryland lost at Minnesota a couple of nights ago. Minnesota was up by 17 points, I think it was. Maryland came back. Minnesota with a severe choke job, missing front ends of 1-and-1s late. Interestingly, last night at practice, talking to Tom Izzo, big smile on Izzo's face. Izzo was like, hey, that loss did not bother me in the least, he was saying. And you may see the video here on this YouTube site. We never posted that over at SpartanMag.com. Maybe we will a little bit later, but Paul Konerdijk did a really great job with an advanced story on Michigan State versus Maryland. 6 things to watch in that game. Go over to SpartanMag.com. Check that out with a great analytical piece from Paul Konerdijk, who knows Michigan State basketball as well as anybody in the media. Check him out. Good article over there today for a big game on Saturday. We will go right to the questions. All the questions, almost all of them pertain to football. I invited questions at the Underground Bunker message board, which is a football-centric message board. I did not post a post over at the Final Forum, which is our basketball message board. So I probably should have done that over there to get more basketball questions. We have 1 or 2. We will get to those a little bit later. Let's go to the questions. And once again, come on in. If you're not already a subscriber to this site, at the YouTube site, go ahead and subscribe. That's good for us. Give us a thumbs up. That helps also to get our to broaden the range of our podcast here. And it's been a pretty good, fun experiment that we began. I don't know, when was it? September. We've gotten some good growth. Having a lot of fun with it, and it's been good. I've got my Adidas Rivals.com camp hoodie on today. The Rivals Camp series is already underway in the southern portion of the United States. It'll be coming back to the Midwest in April. Be checking that out, I think, in Columbus, maybe Chicago also. I don't think Adidas is the sponsor anymore, but haven't gotten the new gear yet, so that's what we have on today. And once again, appreciate everybody being here. So anyway, we'll go to the questions right now. Going to the mailbag. We call it the mailbag. Looks like the microphone is working. Mike Bov from Granville, Michigan, with the opening question. He asks, what overall grade would you give this coaching staff? Talking about the new staff that's been hired at Michigan State. On defense, it has to be an A. I mean, you've got Mike Tressel, who was a sought-after defensive coordinator 2 years ago, probably going to be linebackers coach. His role has not been defined yet. We spoke with Mel Tucker at the press conference on Monday. He came and talked a little bit. We've got video of that over at SpartanMag.com, also here on the YouTube channel, and did a little bit of a roundtable afterwards. And he was asked about Tressel and what his title is going to be, and he said, well, that's going to be determined real soon. But, he even acknowledged that it wasn't nailed down yet. So I'm not sure if he's linebackers coach or inside linebackers coach. Ross Els has some experience as a linebackers coach also. And for now, Ross Els is listed as special teams coach. I wouldn't be surprised if Els also takes on a position coaching job as well. But that would entail a change because the press release went out that he was special teams coach. When you look at Ross Els on the staff, was a linebackers coach, special teams coordinator, just special teams coordinator. You've got him to move into one of the linebacking jobs if necessary. That's a strong situation. Tressel, if he, a former, an excellent linebackers coach under Narduzzi, and then as a co-defensive coordinator as well. Harlan Barnett, former co-defensive coordinator, $1 million contract to go to Florida State. Things unraveled there. Hearing some things off the record about that and I don't know if dysfunctional is the right word, but I'm not sure Harlan Barnett was able to be full-blown Harlan Barnett there. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of that, maybe someday later. But anyway, Harlan Barnett, terrific as a co-defensive coordinator with Mike Tressel, helping Michigan State get to the college football playoff in 2015 and success again in 17. Then he moved on to Florida State. He comes back right now as defensive backs coach. So you've got $1 million coordinator as a defensive backs coach. You've got what amounts to $1 million coordinator, Mike Tressel. He could have commanded that 2 years ago as a linebackers coach. And you put that with Scotty Hazelton, appears he's going to be the defensive coordinator, $1 million coordinator overseeing those guys. And Mel Tucker, show me a defensive coordinator under the age of 49 anywhere in the sport of football with a resume like he has. Now, I know he's head coach, but he'll oversee the operation. That defensive staff, I don't know how he could term it as anything but excellent. Ron Burton remaining as defensive line coach. I think he did a really good job as defensive tackles coach. Did a good job as defensive line coach initially. I thought Mark D'Antonio did a good job of rethinking the defensive line coaching situation in terms of bringing in Chuck Bulla the last couple of years to be defensive ends coach, because the difference between defensive end and defensive tackle really became more pronounced in recent years, with defensive ends having to play defense as an unblocked player with zone read offense. So defensive ends by themselves required more teaching. So Ron Burton became a defensive tackles coach. So now is Ron Burton just the D-line coach and the overall D-line coach? Not sure. Maybe Hazelton, in the past, Hazelton has taken on half of a linebacker's job as well. Is it possible that Tressel could be outside linebackers and defensive ends coach and work with defensive ends, maybe not for pass rush, but for zone read defense? I don't know. That's just speculation. I've not heard that. But the personnel on the defensive staff has to be regarded as an A across the board. Hazelton, a rising defensive coordinator, 1 year at Kansas State. Prior to that, 2 years at Wyoming, and spent time in the NFL as well. Position coach at other stops, I think USC. So, also I spoke with Jack Nowlin. You guys might remember Cowboy Jack Nowlin. He used to write for us at Spartan Magazine back in the old days. He moved back to Wyoming, and he works, I think, with the newspaper in either Casper or Laramie. I think Casper. I should know that. I've got his card right over there. I should know that. I apologize, Jack. Casper, the Star Tribune. Anyway, Jack, really good guy, did a great job for us. So when they hired Hazelton, I said, Jack, come on the message board and give us any insight. I think that he wasn't able to get on the message board, but he'll probably be back at some point. Anyway, what his line to me, and he followed Hazelton for 2 years at Wyoming, and I've got it on the phone. I'd have to check. I'd have to call it back up. I can't do that right now. But his exact words were something along the lines of, I guess it wouldn't be his exact words, but to paraphrase, it was something along the line of, he said he worked wonders. That was Jack's line. And Jack works as, he's, basically the sports director, sports editor at the newspaper in Casper, Wyoming, the biggest newspaper in Wyoming, I think. He was sports writer of the year in the state of Wyoming at least once. Anyway, and Jack knows the Michigan State football program, covered it here for, 8-9 years with me. And he said, and he follows Wyoming Cowboys football closely, and he said Hazelton worked wonders with the defense in 2 years at Wyoming. And then at Kansas State this year, what were they? They were number 2 in the Big 12 in scoring defense, number 2 in the pack in the Big 12 in passing defense for Kansas State, his 1 year at Kansas State, number 8 in the Big 12 in rushing defense. I think total defense, they were 3rd or 4th. And that's in 1 year. And over the years, watching what goes on here, I watched Nick Saban come in and do his thing here. Watched Hank Bulla for 1 year as defensive coordinator in 1994. Even going back to George Perlis in 1983 or whatever his first year was. Nick Saban's first year in 95. Narduzzi's first year in, 2007. Defense was improved that first year. But what I've seen from Bulla, Narduzzi, and Saban is that it takes more than 1 year to completely enable a defensive coordinator to have a huge impact on a defense. Apparently, Hazelton worked wonders at Wyoming in 1 or 2 years, did a good job at Kansas State in his first year. So it takes, and Narduzzi, his first year at Pittsburgh as head coach, it's taken a while, and they're still a little slow, in my opinion, to update what they do against some of the pass happy defenses and what they, like what happened against with when they played Oklahoma State 2 years ago. So even the best coordinators, including Narduzzi at Michigan State in 07 and Saban in 1995, showed improvement, but you don't go from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 right away as a new defensive coordinator. That being said, Michigan State has good personnel on defense, losing a lot of personnel. It's not a rebuild on defense, it's a relay. Michigan State's program is in good shape. We talked about this on the Stout Show yesterday about the culture change that Mel Tucker was talking about at his press conference on Monday. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit here today. I'm not sure that word applies in all areas to the program. I think the roster is pretty good. Not as good as it was in 13, 14, 15, obviously, but it's not a complete rebuild job. As far as the defense goes, it will be a different mindset, different philosophy. So that part of it needs to be taught. Also taught to Tressel and Barnett about what they want, about what Hazelton's going to want to do. So that part's going to be new, but I don't think it's a complete overhaul. We'll get into more of that probably a little later. So the grade, defense is an A. Offense, there's some incompletes and some unknowns. Excuse me. On offense, you've got a running backs coach and his first year's running backs coach. Did I say culture? Yeah, culture. Sorry about that. Just seeing some messages pop up here on the screen. As far as the offensive coaches, a first-year running backs coach who comes highly recommended. Tucker worked with him at Colorado. He knows what he's getting there. We don't. Wide receivers coach, Courtney Hawkins. A lot of us know a lot about Courtney Hawkins. We've not seen him coach at the college level yet. A lot of people are really bullish on what he can do as a college coach, and I think that he'll do really well in terms of his insight into the position, having played wide receiver in the NFL. He's an organizer, he's a taskmaster, and he's ready for this. He's excited about this. I think he'll do well, but it's hard for us to look at that and regard it as a known commodity. Offensive line coach Kapilovic, big time hire there. Big time hire. Hearing great things about him. You may have heard our podcast with Artie Mangum over at the Skull Session podcast at SpartanMag.com. Artie Mangum, a former high school teammate of mine. His son plays running back at the University of Colorado, 4-star recruit, scholarship tailback, is a true freshman, over 400 yards rushing. We spoke with Artie, and he says all kinds of great things about Kapilovic as the offensive line coach. He's really, really high on him as an offensive line coach, as a recruiter as well. So offensive line, very important position, and I think Michigan State's getting a good one there. Good one. So offensive coordinator with Jay Johnson coming from Colorado. Last year in year one at Colorado, operating with Steven Montez as a quarterback, a big quarterback, not very mobile. Had to revamp some younger guys on an offensive line there. Had a really good wide receiver. But what you saw at Colorado might not be everything that you see here. Tucker says that Jay Johnson sees football the same way that Tucker does. Tucker is not a guy that's going to have his system and going to pound that system into the personnel. He's going to look to see what the personnel is and then put together schemes based on that, which I think is a refreshing attitude to take. He knows more about football than I do, but I think we've seen coaches in various sports try to hammer in their system when maybe they don't have people that can do it, including some of the best. I thought at the end Bobby Knight was too married to man-to-man defense in basketball and did very little in terms of sag help defense. And of course, Bob Knight knows way more about basketball than I'll ever know. But I just remember that one time they played Pacific in the NCAA tournament. Must have been 1999, maybe 2000, and just staying spread out in that tight man-to-man, and they just didn't have guys that could play on-ball defense against those guys. Pacific beat them by about 20, 25 in the NCAA tournament. That's an example of a coach sticking to one system when the personnel didn't dictate that was the way to go. Hindsight being 2020. So Tucker said on Monday, I've never been married to one scheme. He's played 3-4, he's played 4-3 as a coordinator in both, and said he's had success with both in the NFL. And he sees football that way. So that pertains to the offensive side also. So some of the things they did at Colorado, I'm sure some will travel here. Some may not, depending on who the quarterback is. Will they go with more of a mobile quarterback? Or will they settle on Theo Day? Do we know what Peyton Thorne can do? Will they go to the portal? We'll get into those questions here as well. I'm a little bit low on battery. I wasn't up to 100% in camera battery. So usually we go about 2 hours. Usually I say we want to go an hour, and I usually fail and go too long. We've already gone 20 minutes just getting into this, but there's a lot to talk about. So what you saw at Colorado last year on offense, interestingly, I thought it was interesting that when they wanted to go ball control, they were able to. Talked about the two of their last 3 games against Stanford and Washington. Melted the last 6 minutes of the clock to beat Washington and finished in victory formation, driving from their own 1-yard line. And then against Stanford, I think it was the last 5.5 minutes, drove for a field goal to win at the buzzer. With a 6-point lead against Washington, converted a 3rd and long, went to the air to get the chains to hold on to the ball rather than playing the clock and to play defense. So they went to the air, but also ball control. The interesting thing is, watching some of their games against Colorado State and Nebraska, they went under center last year a little bit. Talking to Artie, he estimated it was maybe 10-15% of the time under center. Playing under center is rare in football these days. Georgia does it. Kirby Smart does it. Mel Tucker comes from the Kirby Smart tree a little bit. Tucker comes from the NFL tree where they do it a lot. Saban used to do it a lot, not as much now. He'll go under center in short yardage in the goal line. Last year, Michigan State went away from being under center. Dave Warner used to do it quite a bit, not a ton, but quite a bit. With success in 13, 14, 15, 16, and with 15, and then criticism in later years. Brad Salem became offensive coordinator, and they did very, very little under center. Very little. Not that it's one way is the right way or the wrong way, but I thought it's interesting that Colorado goes under center more than what you saw at Michigan State last year. Now, will they do less of that with a different quarterback here? I'm not sure. He had 1 year there. When he was at Minnesota under Tracy Claeys, Jerry Kill was spread shotgun, but wanted to be power between the tackles. I think Claeys was similar. Summers was, and Johnson was similar there also. So, offensive coordinator, that's one. Like any coach, any coaching staff in college football or any level of football remains to be seen when someone comes in, just like Hazelton remains to be seen. So I'll give the defense a B or the offense a B. You might want to say B- based on a couple of incompletes because new coaches coming in that have not coached at that position before. But you have to start somewhere. And, Hawkins and Piegler are regarded as rising coaches. I know, Hawkins he spent a lot of time at Beecher. It's not like he's a 30-year-old hotshot. He's been around a while. So on one hand, he's a new coach. On the other hand, he brings some extensive experience and communication skills. I know the receivers are excited to be working with him. As far as Harlan Barnett goes, I know that his first meeting with his players, I was told, went really, really well. The word I was told was awesome. The defensive backs loved meeting number one in the DB's room over at the Scandalaris Center with Harlan Barnett as their new defensive backs coach. Went really well. So those would be my grades. Let me go ahead and put a tweet out, let people know that we're here having some fun, invite some people. Let's take a second, take a little less time than we did last time. I'm not sure if the image came up the way I want to there. Oh well. All right, let's go back to the mailbag. Actually, let's see if the live thing is working here. There we go. Sorry about the delay. They're just trying to get some things set up. Jameson in Cincinnati says, out of all the new coaches, which one are you the most intrigued to see in action, whether in practice or on game day? On game day, I'm interested in Hazleton. I like to watch defense just to see what the approaches are. Offense is interesting too. Everybody likes offense to see what schemes are in place. Hazleton and Johnson both as the new coordinators on game day. In practice, I want to see Kapilovic. Watch him. I've watched some good offensive line coaches here over the years. Some guys that have won national championships. Pat Rule, Jim Bowman, Jeff Stoutland, all won national championships. Not here. Bowman won a national championship at Ohio State. Stoutland won a national championship at Alabama. Rule won a national championship at USC. I've seen some of the best. Kapilovic coming in as a younger offensive line coach, getting into his prime years as an offensive line coach. A lot of energy. Look forward to watching him work. Like I said, I've seen some of the best. To watch him work now, it's just going to help frame of reference to see how things are done. So, Hazleton, I was watching some of their games, Kansas State against Mississippi State. He's a 4-down coach, 4-down lineman. Maybe I'll need to watch more of their games, but against Mississippi State, which was a spread formation, went with 4 down. And if you're going 4 down against a spread, you probably prefer to go 4 down. Like I said, Tucker says he's gone 3 down, 4 down. He, based on what he said, I would anticipate that they're going to have a little bit of both available at Michigan State, which they did at Alabama, some 3 down and some 4 down. We've seen that at Michigan in recent years. So what they did at Alabama, I think it was 4 down for a long time, went to 3 down, 2 gapping, and it's been mostly 3 down in recent years, but the ability to go to 4 if they need to. So if they don't have the defensive line people that they think they need to go 32 gapping, then they'll go 4. But it's going to be up to Hazleton, and they'll know more after spring football. We talked about this on the podcast last week. I think Michigan State does have some people that can play a 30 and do some 2 gapping. Naquan Jones is a big guy. He can play some what they used to call middle guard. He can zero shade that center and 2 gap and command a double team, I think. If he gets completely in shape and really brings it. The defensive ends, can they be a 5 technique? You need to be stronger rather than edge athletic in a 30. But Hazleton, from what I've seen, favors a 4-3. Michigan State is recruited to a 4-3. So, and at the beginning of the Mississippi State game, they were an under 4-3, but then later became an over 4-3, depending on where the 3 technique is on the strong side or the weak side. On 3rd down, they brought them up, press coverage, single safety deep, blitz. At least the first 3rd down. I've not watched the whole game yet. So they've got that in their toolbox. 3rd down, more of a Narduzzi type of thing, pressure. And but single safety deep, Michigan State did more of that here in recent years. Narduzzi would go pressure cover 3 all the time, to the point where it was probably too predictable. This was cover 1 press. They did a lot of cover 3. I've been hearing that he's more of a cover 3 coach. He prefers that in the back. Michigan State did that more in the last 2 years in non-blitz situations, and that's been popular in the NFL in recent years. And I'm hearing Hazleton is that way, and you can see some cover 3. Bringing in the strong safety number 4, Wayne Jones, for Kansas State last year, disguising it late. He'd come down to the linebacker level late. Sometimes you look at it and you're like, man, they're going to be weak against the run. They're outnumbered against the run. Right before the snap, number 4, the safety comes down, joins the box. Now they're not outnumbered. So late shifts, disguising things, and that's all well and good as long as you don't confuse yourself, as long as everybody's on the same page. Judging by the success they've had over the years, it seems that they are multiple while also having good quality control, not blowing tires in the process. So it's always fun to watch a new defensive coordinator come in and see what they're going to do. The 4 down is not going to be a big departure from what they have personnel-wise right now. In terms of wanting to be able to play some press on 3rd downs, Barnett's been all about that over the years. So, and I saw what I thought was some quarters also. And, a lot of people run quarters, and that Tressel and Barnett are all about that. They can exchange ideas and help that come about with no problem, assuming Hazelton becomes coordinator. By the time you see this, it might already be official. Like I said, from what I've heard, contract's in place, and they're just going over some specifics. Let's go to a question. Ohio Spartan from Bellefontaine, Ohio, and then I'll get to some of the questions over in the chat area. Looks like we've got a lot of questions there. We'll be getting to those here soon. Ohio Spartan from Bellefontaine, Ohio says, which of the new coaches that Tucker has brought in would you rate as a plus recruiter? I asked Artie that question, and he says Kapilovic. Kapilovic, the offensive line coach, is an upbeat, high-energy guy, and he'll be recruiting various positions, various places. Ted Gilmore has been a good recruiter. He's the guy coming from Wisconsin, be tight ends coach, was wide receivers coach at Wisconsin, recruited Danny Davis there. And Cephas, he got him out of Georgia. When you may have noticed this, when we wrote our article, when we wrote the article about Gilmore, initially the headline was Gilmore brings strong recruiting background to Michigan State. I went back in and changed that headline to good recruiting background. Strong might have been a little too strong of a word, and we want to be credible. We're not going to be out there banging drums like, hey, this guy's great, when we don't actually know or think that he's great. My initial impression and information that I got is that he was a good, strong recruiter, a strong recruiter. I scaled that back to good after talking with people that I know that covered him at Nebraska and Wisconsin. They think he's pretty, just an okay, good recruiter is what they said. Will he do more recruiting here? Will it be ramped up here? Possibly so. That's just what they say. I'm not saying that. I don't know. When I look at the people he recruited at Wisconsin, it's a pretty broad, diverse, varied group. I mean, he's gone to California, gone to Texas, gone to Georgia. It looks pretty good to me. So Gilmore, I think, has been good, and I would anticipate him being even better at Michigan State. In some ways, it's easier to recruit to Michigan State than some other places he's been. Also, perhaps most importantly, the head coach, Mel Tucker, is going to be extremely demanding of these assistant coaches in terms of recruiting. He will not be recruiting from the back. And that's kind of what Mark D'Antonio did. He recruited from the back. So did John L. Smith. And really, so did Bobby Williams. Tucker will be leading the recruiting from the front. He will be working hard every day on it, and he will be expecting that from the others. We've seen that a little bit already in terms of the things he's saying, and my contacts at Colorado say that the recruiting will be diligent and energized. And Tucker has told us in the roundtable, some of the stuff there was off the record, but really not much. There wasn't anything controversial being talked about. It was just getting to know him a little bit with some of the reporters. And his recruiting, it's not just lip service. He's going to be recruiting from the front. So these other guys, if they've been good recruiters in the past, I think they're going to be taking it up a notch with him leading the example. So I'm most interested to see how Tucker does leading from the front. Now, he's been really busy getting his staff together right now. We'll talk more about that in a minute. C. Kozel from St. Clair Shores, Michigan says, any word on how open with the media Mel Tucker will be during spring practice? That is a great question. And in the last two springs, last spring we didn't get a chance to talk to any assistant coaches. The year before that, it was less. Before that, it was better. It's up to Tucker, of course, and I asked Mel Tucker about this on Monday. Will we be able to talk to assistant coaches? And he said yes, and I was very happy to hear that. I'm sure that you are going to be happy to hear that also. I was concerned about that because he's coming from the Nick Saban camp and the Kirby Smart camp, and they do not let their assistant coaches talk to media. So I was a little concerned about that, but Mel Tucker says we will be able to talk to the to assistant coaches. I'm not sure how often, but this was refreshing. I think it's good in terms of promoting the program because, the more media that's out there, the more interest there is, and the more they have a chance to get people excited about the program and sell tickets. That's the only reason they have any patience for those of us in the media to begin with. So I guess we work off each other there a little bit. But he said that he believes that the assistant coaches need to have work in the media department. If they ever want to go on to become a head coach someday, he feels that they need to get in front of the cameras and work on it. So I wonder if he wished that he would have had a chance to do more interviews when he was at Alabama and Georgia. I mean, this is a guy that was interim head coach in the NFL. So he's done big time press conferences in front of a lot of cameras. And then he goes to Alabama and he's not allowed to do interviews. So that's kind of weird, right? So I think it's great and forward thinking on his behalf in more than one way. And me personally, I'm glad of this. But in terms of servicing his program and servicing his coaches, allowing them to be available for interviews. So yes, there will be more of that. In terms of how open we'll be with media, in terms of being able to attend practice. And this is the thing, at the round table, I asked, can we talk to assistant coaches? He said yes. And other people asked, can we also attend practice? Of course, I'd like to go to practice. But that always comes up. Will we be able to attend practice? Will practices be open? I hear people ask that. Are practices going to be open? And a lot of times the people that ask for practice to be open go to practice and don't even watch practice. Not all of them, but some. But there's a lot of good people in the media that really go and watch closely and have great opinions that I have a lot of respect for. But it's always interesting, people wanting to see open practice, and sometimes those people don't actually watch it. But anyway, I could go on about that, but to each his own, it's fine. There's some really good people covering Michigan State and Big Ten schools in general, for sure. So, in terms of how open practices are going to be, at that time, he can't guarantee the extent of how open they will be at this time. So that's something he's still going to be thinking about. When D'Antonio first came in, we had practices open a little longer, and some of his initial jersey scrimmages, I think his very first jersey scrimmage in the spring, which I think was the week before his first green-white game, was open to the press. We watched the whole scrimmage. That was great. Will that happen now? I don't know. And I understand, there's a lot of espionage in college football. That's why coaches, when they talk on the sideline, they cover their mouths, because they know people are lip reading. Why? Because, they're probably lip reading too. So there's a lot of things being filmed. Signals, they try to keep the signals simple for their players, but they have to change them because people are stealing signals not only in that game, but for the next week's game. So if you're worried about signals being stolen or verbiage, then you have to be careful not only about what you do during game day, but also who's allowed in practice. So I understand that. I'd like to watch more. I'd like to be able to watch some scrimmaging. And even if we can't watch 11-on-11 game operation, I would like to watch some of the, ones versus ones blocking drills, when they go inside periods with inside runs or just pass protection drills. That'd be great to watch. Or when DBs match up with receivers. I'd like to watch that. I would understand why they wouldn't want us to watch 11-on-11 with signals and all that stuff. So I'm not going to be whining and complaining about that. I'd like to, but I understand they've got a job to do also, and the chief among those jobs is to win. So I understand. They've got a job to do. We've got a job to do. Their job's more important than ours, probably, right? Sometimes. Unless there's something going wrong, then people really need to rely on the media. Some media is really good, right? Including our newspapers. Support your newspapers. I don't write for a newspaper, but support your newspapers. You can support the old Asable Fly Shop also in Grayling if you want to. All right, Rob South. He says, what's up, fellas? Let's go over here to the chat area. The Untitled Beer Ranking Show says, we in here. Oh, I think I know who that is. He posts over there at SpartanMag.com. I think that's the person. The Untitled Beer Ranking Show. I think that they review beers he does with his grandfather, and it's kind of cool. Chicago Spartan, damn right, Comp, Chi-Town, good to see you. Is that you, Paul? If so, good to see you. Get back to work. Adam Maficus, I never know how to pronounce that. It says go green. Hayden Fisher says happy hours officially starting early. Good. Have a drink on me. Ben Moore says, what's wrong with not getting work done on a Friday afternoon. You should only buy a car made on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for a reason. Is that possible? Can you can you request a car that was made on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? I didn't know that. Um, Ultimate Beer Ranking Show also says putting that bread up. Okay. Hayden Vischer says Adam Rittenberg of ESPN confirming Scotty in a few minutes ago. Kansas State players were informed this morning. Okay, so that's about as official as it can get. All right. And I mean, Adam confirmed it. I don't know if he confirmed that. Adam's a good reporter. I don't know if he confirmed that with Scotty Hazelton or. I mean, I could have confirmed it with sources close to the contractual situation. Blong John says bigger impact, Coach Cap or Gilmore? I'm going to say Coach Cap. Coach Cap. Gilmore's coaching tight ends. That doesn't have as much of an impact on X's and O's. Recruiting wise, they're both going to recruit well. So overall, Cap. And offensive line, very important. Old Tuck says, Dell headquarters. You're at Dell headquarters. I know Old Tuck works in Austin. Gray Cube via Ludington. Hope you have that cubicle decorated with SpartanMag attire. You don't have to. You can do your own thing. Do you think Rocket will continue to trend up for the remainder of the season? So Old Tuck with an actual question, not a silly question. Old Tuck usually leads the league in silly questions. Will Rocket trend up? Okay, I see your play on words there. No, he's got some ability and he's gaining experience and confidence on offense for Michigan State. On defense, did a really great job against Maryland for most of that game. First time they played Maryland. And what's his name for Maryland? Excellent senior guard who I can never remember his name. Of course, had 4 3-pointers in the late going. And we talked about this last week. They weren't Rockets' fault. 2 of them were Xavier Tillman's fault. And Xavier Tillman's a very good defensive player, but he had played 39 minutes at that point. And you get some mental fatigue in those situations too. And we saw that with Tillman. And then we saw a couple of days ago against Luka Garza, Tillman sat out the first 16 minutes in the first half due to foul trouble. That hurt Michigan State in the first half, but it helped Michigan State in the second half because Tillman was fresh in the second half. Even though he played all 20 minutes of the second half, there was an obvious, decided energy advantage for Xavier Tillman in the last 5 minutes of that game compared to Luka Garza. Garza was great in the first half, but he played 39 and a half minutes of that game, only sat for like 26 seconds. And down the stretch, Tillman was physical, outquicking him, and also outthinking him, taking away the preferred shoulder, countering back to the other shoulder on that blocked shot at the end of the game. Tillman was great because Tillman was fresh. I mentioned that to Izzo yesterday after practice, and Izzo said, well, Tillman also had a little less on his plate mentally against Iowa than he did against Maryland. Because against Maryland, the first time, Tillman was still anticipating the arrival of his second child and had a lot going on at home, as some of us know, in that situation. So, but I think Izzo wants to play Tillman fewer minutes. He'll get a better Tillman late in games. So anyway, Rocket on defense, I think, showed some things in that game, showing more and more. On offense, he's starting to get that runner going a little bit more. And, offense is going to end up in Rocket's plate a lot because defenses are going to try to take away Cassius Winston first and Tillman second. So it's going to end up in his plate and Aaron Henry. And Aaron Henry doing better things off the dribble, getting into the lane. He's gotten into the lane for those jumpers, but missed a lot of them up until the last week or so. Now he's getting into that lane, going up with his excellent vertical, getting that shot off. It's hard to defend that. And he's making a higher percentage of those, which makes a big difference in the offense. Those are the guys you have to stop. So defense will be skewed toward Henry and Winston and Tillman. That's going to give Rocket Watts some opportunities. I think he's sometimes at his best late in the shot clock. Now, late in the shot clock, sometimes you have to take a bad shot because you've got no choice. But he gets the ball with 9 seconds left with enough time to do something, and he knows he's got a clear conscience to go ahead and create because if he springs something up, he's not going to get corrected on it because the shot clock's down. More and more, you're going to see Rocket Watts taking more of those shots, and as he gets older, he'll get more proficient at making them. Saw him make some key ones against Nebraska and Iowa in the last 2 games. What do you have? Career high against Iowa. 17 shots attempted was the most he's ever attempted. Most of those were good shots. He's a very mindful person, a conscientious person. He doesn't want to go out there hunting shots, but he will get openings just because of who he's surrounded with. So, will he continue to make shots at that clip? Hard to say. I would anticipate him being, maybe not as streaky as Gabe Brown is, but he'll have good days and other days when he's not as hot. That's just the nature of basketball, especially a freshman, especially this time of year when they're supposed to be hitting the freshman wall. Have not seen the freshman wall come into play yet with Rocket Watts. I don't know about the others. Let's go back to the mailbag. Hayden V in Grand Rapids says, what's for lunch? Cannolis. Who, in your opinion, is the best developer on the new staff? The best player developer on the new staff? Well, we know what Harlan Barnett can do as a player developer in terms of player development. As a defensive backs coach, when Narduzzi was here, and then as a co-defensive coordinator, he remained defensive backs coach. Back then, he worked with the corners while D'Antonio worked a lot with the safeties, and sometimes vice versa. Now that Barnett will be focusing on DBs, I would anticipate even sharper player development there. Now, are they as talented in the defensive backs room now as they were 3 or 4 years ago? I'm not sure. Going into 2013, when Michigan State won the Rose Bowl, Barnett was very excited about his defensive back talent, but was concerned about the depth. We've talked about this before. He jokingly told us in the press, and also some of you out there on the banquet circuit, the donor circuit, he was like, pray for my starters, because my starters are good, but behind them, not so sure. This year, I'm not even sure about the starters, but I'm not sure the talent in the defensive backs room is as strong as it was back then. That being said, now that Barnett doesn't have to worry about being a coordinator and he's just the defensive backs coach, I would anticipate the backup defensive backs becoming as good as they can possibly be sooner. I mean, some of those guys are what they are. And I'm not saying they're good or bad or whatever, but basically you are what you are. We know that. But at some point, you can reach your potential quicker if you have a coach like this who is only focused on that one position. Will there be a better defensive back coach anywhere in America than Harlan Barnett this year in college football? Wow, I doubt it. So, player development, I don't know what the talent level is top to bottom in the defensive back room. I'd have to look at the whole list, and it'll be interesting to watch in the spring. But in terms of player development, Harlan Barnett's got to be at the top of that list. And I look forward to the offensive line coach, Kapilovic, too. Did a good job with the young offensive line last year, and hear a lot of good things about him. So I think offensive line player development is going to be good, and they've got some players there with some experience. Maybe not the greatest physical manpower at all those positions, but some guys that do have some. So that's not a bad place to start. Offensive line and defensive backfield. Have to wait and see on defensive ends. They're a little bit low there. Jacob Panashuk still in the picture, and we talked about this on the message board a couple of days ago. Yeah, he met with Mel Tucker, and Tucker talked about that a little bit off the record, but didn't say much, but it was positive. I posted about it, and when Tucker told us that Panashuk was still in the fold and all was good, and he met with him, I didn't run right back to the website and report that. It was 2 days later when Michigan State put out a video from winter conditioning, and Panashuk was in the video. People on our message board were like, well, Panashuk's in there. Is that an old video? And I was able to say, no, that's not an old video. He is still with the team. And that begged the question, and I just said, it's all good. And then more people commented about it. Then I said, yeah, there was a conversation. It's all good. So that was an off-the-record roundtable, but it's not like he told us anything controversial. Obviously, if he told us something controversial, that would remain off the record. And there were one or two things when he said, now we're off the record, right, when he talked about a couple things. But something like that that's innocuous, better to clear up things. For the readers, the observers, the stakeholders, the season ticket holders, the people like yourselves that pay money to be part of the program, you probably deserve to know some of those things, right? Secondly, helps clear things up for Panashuk a little bit too. So I went ahead and did that. And I know that they have people that monitor the message board, and if they have a problem with it, they can contact with me, which No one from the football program has contacted me about something I've done wrong um, since my friend Nick Saban, who did it a couple times and it was not pleasant. Anyway, all right. MSU DC from West Bloomfield. And what he said, one of the things he was upset about, Saban, is I wrote an article after his name was mentioned for the New York Giants job. But I guess he saw it in the magazine like 3 weeks later, because our magazine came out every 2 weeks back then. So he might have seen it by the time it got to his office. By the time he read it, it was 3 weeks after the fact. So he called me up and was like, "Let it die, let it die." He was really mad. I mean, as if we had a good number of subscribers, but wow, Ramrod. Anyway, that was fun. All right, MSU DC from West Bloomfield says, which of the new coaches are going to be recruiting Detroit and the Metro Detroit areas? What are the first impressions of Coach Tucker from the Detroit guys? From the Detroit recruits? We're still talking to them. In terms of the coaches in the Detroit area are looking forward to hearing from Tucker. Tucker's been really busy. I know some coaches with Michigan ties are a little more been expecting to hear from him sooner, but he's been busy. I know that when D'Antonio was hired, that was December, and it was recruiting period. So right away, he sent coaches. Was it Barnett and who else? Barnett and Dan Enos. They went to Detroit, and they went to every single high school in Detroit over a 2-day period. This time of year, I don't think you can do that. It's a quiet period or a dead period. So you're able to call, but there's no contact, which means not going to schools. So reaching out to those coaches, I would imagine that would be coming soon, but some of those coaches are waiting to hear from Tucker. Have any of our guys reached out to the Detroit area high schools? I just mentioned that. I'm not sure about that yet. As far as Detroit goes, in recent years, Terry Samuel recruited Detroit with mixed results. Reggie Mitchell recruited Detroit years ago, and he had some success with Minnesota, came to Michigan State, had some success here and there, but Reggie Mitchell ran into some problems at Detroit where, like, if Michigan State did not offer a kid, some coaches would hear negative feedback from coaches. And Reggie would say, well, did the Wolverines offer him? They're like, no. And he'd be, well, what's the damn difference? But there's a double standard there sometimes. Not with all coaches, but with some. That's years ago. It's not some of the same coaches. But Michigan State's got some work to do there. Some improvement to make over what it's been lately. And, of course, the Curtis Blackwell situation has hurt the situation down there. So some fences need to be mended there. But in terms of who's going to be recruiting in Detroit, I think Kapilovic is going to be down there a little bit, and I think Barnett knows some coaches down there. I wouldn't be surprised if Courtney Hawkins gets down there. But at Colorado, it's my understanding that the assistant coaches didn't necessarily have specific areas. They all recruited somewhat nationally, sometimes recruiting their position first. Maybe it was different at Colorado because they didn't have as much in-state talent. Maybe it'll be different here because at Michigan there's more in-state talent, and also a border state like Ohio is going to be different. So I'm sure there'll be some, like Harlan Barnett will have Cincinnati because that's where he's from. Tressel has recruited areas of Ohio in the past. I'm sure that he will stay in his areas. It just makes sense. So, but I'm not sure that it's going to be as regionally specific as we're used to seeing if they bring the Colorado model to Michigan State. That's going to be hammered out now that they've got the entire staff together and as they move forward. But as of right now, some of it has probably been established. I've not heard what it is yet, but we will probably start to see recruits mention which coaches they're hearing from when they get to the point where they're hearing from more of them on a regular basis. Sparty 1981 says, now that we have our defensive coordinator in place, can you share if you know if Schumann or Hazelton were the plan A choices, and how close were we really to getting Schumann, if at all? Now, Schumann is the co-defensive coordinator at Georgia, and it raised some interest when Mel Tucker followed Schumann on Twitter. He coached with Schumann at Georgia for 2 years, I guess. Schumann's a younger coordinator, about 31 years old, regarded as an up-and-coming coach. He was in it. He was involved in some discussions. I don't know whether he was offered the position. I don't know how far that went. Also heard from sources that Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator at University of Cincinnati, was also someone that Michigan State reached out to. How far that went, I'm not sure. So hard to say who the plan A and B and C were. I don't know that for a fact. Not really sure. I have an idea, but I don't know enough to float it out there as speculation. But those three, at least, were involved. Michigan State Polo in Rockford, he says, I'm intrigued to hear your breakdown how the different support staff positions will work. Support staff, so not the on-field coaches, but the support staff coaches. A basic description. Descriptions in some ways are general, but in some ways they differ for each staff. Chief of staff. That would be like they've got something called chief of staff. There's never been a chief of staff here before. Going back in the old days, it was just called an administrative assistant. But I'm not sure what role Tim Allen. I can't remember what his title was at Michigan State. I could look it up, but it's not important. But Tim Allen was D'Antonio's right-hand man. Went with him to press conferences, meetings, and so forth. It's a right-hand man type of guy. I guess that's going to be chief of staff. And that's going to be Jeff Martzen, and he was director, I think, of football operations at Colorado. Now Cody Cox is coming in as director of football operations. I don't know as much about those guys. Those guys are administrative assistants, less to do maybe with on-field personnel situations. But the director of player personnel, Scott Aligo, I should know how to pronounce that with my last name, but I don't. I think he's 37 years old. He was director of player personnel at Akron last season. So bringing in a director of player personnel from an Ohio college at the MAC level, I would think that makes complete sense for Michigan State. To get a younger guy on his way up who had some time with quality control and player personnel at the National Football League level, and then was at Akron. So, a guy that has ties to Ohio. That's what Tucker said on the press release. So Aligo, was in contact with high school coaches to let them know at Akron, recruiting-wise, what Akron was interested in, maybe what was going on with camps. And also, he would watch film, because if you look at Tucker's statement on him, he says Aligo has a great eye for talent and is, quote, an excellent evaluator of players, unquote. So part of what he did at Akron was evaluate recruits on the front end level and help the staff get involved in recruiting those players in Ohio. That's right up Michigan State's alley now. So, with an Ohio guy. So, that initial evaluation, there's thousands of players out there, and you can't ask Harlan Barnett to watch a lot of film on 500 different DBs. You need different analysts to help pare that down, and maybe they go back and make sure they don't miss people in the meantime. So people like Scott Aligo and others watching that they can help with that initial phase of looking through and getting people out of the system and maybe starring some for other people to look at. And also just making sure, especially in the state of Ohio, turning over those rocks, making sure that they don't miss out on players that are their level. And that's been an important part of Michigan State's recruiting for years, and in the D'Antonio era, is finding those Ohio players, those 2-star, 2.5-star guys that are actually 3.5-star players that other people are not recruiting. Everybody talks about Le'Veon Bell, but it's not just him. This year in the incoming class, I expect Angelo Gross to be kind of in that category. So you're bringing in a guy with experience as a director of player personnel at the MAC level in his 30s in Ohio. So now he's director of player personnel. So That's what he does, and I think that's an interesting hire. Looks like a good one to me. The other ones, I don't know what the administrative assistants. I don't know what a good one is and what I don't know. I can't evaluate those. Director of Player Engagement, Darian Harris. So he is going to be involved with, among other things, helping players after they graduate transitioning to life after football. And I heard that was in he was going to have that position a couple of years ago, and then it kind of fizzled out for various reasons. And now he's back with that role. So good for him. And I think that's a good, noble undertaking. One more question here for the mailbag, and let's see what kind of. I'll go back to the other ones. Oh, let's see. I just got a notification from the Huge Show. I'm supposed to go on. I think 3:00, so we have a little bit more time for that. All right, Spartan Fan 81 from Orange County, California says, "Are there any stories you can share on the coaching search now that it's complete that you couldn't share before? Head coach, coordinators, or assistants? Why Tucker changed his mind and ended up bringing Tressel and Burton back after it was reported that no one was coming back?" Well, that last part, I never reported that they were not coming back. I don't think I reported that. Maybe there were. I think there were some indications on the message board and maybe out on Twitter that no one was coming back, but I'd never heard that for sure. I'm not sure what might have happened there. Tressel and Tucker were retained pretty quickly. He had to go. He had to go through interviews, the exit interviews with the outgoing coaches, and that took an entire week. I think it was initially reported that like on day one, no one was coming back, and I was like, I don't know about that because he was just starting his exit interviews at that point. And as it turned out, more interviews needed to take place. And that's what I posted on the board. So I can't comment on what other people reported. Other stories, the Vince Morrow thing was serious. Everybody knows that. Michigan State went after him, the tight ends coach at Kentucky. And Marcus Freeman was in there too at the same time at Cincinnati. So, that was, Tucker went after him, recruited him, tried to get him. He's known Morrow for a long time. Morrow also knew Stoops for a long time, going back to the neighborhood days in Youngstown. So that was a difficult decision for Vince Morrow. So Michigan State didn't get him. And I'm not sure Michigan State has a Vince Morrow type on this staff. So we'll see how that all develops. So in terms of names and backstories, as names were coming out, we reported them on our Heat Index thread at the Underground Bunker message board. But, it was names and we had backgrounds, but I wasn't hearing much in terms of like back channel stories. Like, there were no, James Bond car chases going on or anything like that. Just names. And a lot of times the names that surfaced were the ones that ended up getting hired. Question number 10, Schnitzel from East Lansing says, with the more aggressive recruiting of Coach Tucker, would you expect some top 15 classes? Top 15. I doubt it. Top 15. Has Michigan State had more than one top 15 class in the last 20 years? Not that I can think of. I mean, even the Dream Team, which I never called it that, was in the top 10 for part of the year and in the top 15, but ended up, I think, 18 or so. And when that class was being put together and they were called the Dream Team and they were ranked number 8 in the country in the summer, I was like, people, Michigan State was close to being full. They were not going to remain in the top 10. I told people that. They were going to slide in the rankings because Michigan State had filled most of their scholarships, didn't have a lot of scholarship availability. I'm like, it's not going to remain a top 10 class. Not going to remain probably a top 15 class, and it didn't. Top 15 is high cotton, and that'll be tough. I'm expecting top 25 classes. I'm sure Tucker wants to put together teams that can compete with the best, and he's going to expect classes that people will regard as top 15 classes. Maybe I'm sure he will be shooting for that. I'll believe it when I see it. I think it's great that he's shooting for that, but I would expect good recruiting at Michigan State to end up being top 25. If you're recruiting at 21, a class ranked number 21 in the country at Michigan State, that's good recruiting. MSU Pat from Atlanta says, Comp, knowing the roster like you do, Who are some of the players you think may have a better opportunity with this staff than the previous staff? We talked a little bit about this last week. Trenton Gillison, I think, is a guy who's on the rise, and he was going to get his chance with the old staff anyway, just because he's going into his junior year. He's a good athlete, has had to learn how to block and become more proficient in that part of his game. Had a good bowl game. I think Trenton Gillison stands to hit the ground running well with this staff, and this staff will want to use the tight end extensively, both blocking and out in the pass game. Sometimes one tight end, sometimes two tight ends. So Gillison's going to get his shot. Big Mooby was talking about Christian Jackson, a guy that's not really seen the field yet. Dominique Long is an interesting one with very good straight line speed. He's had an impact on special teams in the coverages, has never quite been able to make that translate as a regular player in the regular defense. It's going to be a senior this year, right? 6'2", 197, good speed. I'll be interested to see what Harlan Barnett's able to do with Dominique Long. So there's a chance I think he could get a little push. So DBs will be interesting. Offensive linemen, you've seen 8 or 9 on the field already. Can some of those other ones like a James Ohanba become more of an impact? I've not seen any indications of that yet. Let's go back to the chat area. Thanks for posting questions over there, and thanks for those of you that posted over at the Underground Bunker message board with some of the questions I asked earlier. Blong John says, Scotty is a great addition. Gus Bradley speaks very highly of him. Yeah, you hear a lot of good things about Scott Hazelton. Looks like MSU confirmed it on the bunker, talking about the Hazelton thing. 313 Hitman says, go white, go green, gang is here. Jesse Adams, Jesse from Mount Pleasant. He says, my questions are, what do you think about this hire for defensive coordinator with spring ball starting soon? Will we go young offensive line like Duplain or some other older guys like Campbell? Duplain and Campbell's a good battle at left guard. Campbell's a guy, older guy, who came back in 2019 a little bit more refurbished in terms of from a motivational standpoint. He was fired up to make some things happen. Had some more injuries, so he wasn't able to stay on the field as long. Duplain got on the field as a really young guy. Looked like a young guy at times, but I assume he's got a decently high ceiling, and he'll be able to improve from here. So I think that's a flat-out competition there at left guard. Campbell and Duplain. And some others will figure into that one also. So you're asking me, will Michigan State go young or go older? Go young with Duplain or older with Campbell? I don't know because the coaches don't know. We'll be talking to the coaches. How forthright will they be with us? There'll be some feeling out going on there to find out who's on the rise. And I think I've heard that Hazelton, I hear, will be very forthright in saying what he thinks, which is the way Bill Miller was back in the old days. It's one thing I really liked about Bill Miller when he was defensive coordinator. He would tell you flat out, this guy's good enough, this guy's not good enough, off the record, on the record, whatever. And it helped us have a handle on things. It also helped us know that when they had to go to a second or third string, to know how dire a situation might be. So I don't know yet on offensive line because the coaches don't know yet. My guess is I think Campbell's capable. Duplain, younger, different type of player. I don't know yet. Good question there. 313 Hitman. He says, I like the hire of Mel Tucker. I like our future already. 313 Hitman says, Izzo has to get them shooting more consistently. That's their problem to me. Yeah, shooting, even though Michigan State ranks in the top 2 or 3 in the Big Ten in three-point shooting, it doesn't rank as well nationally. But yeah, I mean, we've said this on the podcast here. Izzo's teams have always needed the stretch 4 to be able to hit three-pointers. Granger, Suton, Lorbeck, Draymond Green, Adrian Payne, Kenny Goins. The 4-man has to be able to not only make three-pointers, but be a threat to shoot three-pointers. If and when he's a threat, that opens up the point guard play. This year, up till now, they've not had shooting from the power forward position. That is one reason they've experimented with Kyle Arns at the 4, going small. People talk about going small. a big part of going small is having a stretch four that can stretch the defense out. And Kyle Arns shoots pretty well, and he's doing his best. Good player, but well, I mean, technically, I mean, Kenny Goins hit some big shots, but his percentage was only maybe 34%. But he was streaky through the year, but he came up big in March, obviously, and that's what they need. Allen Anderson played the four in 2005. He was the power forward, and he was a decent three-point shooter for his career. But in March, he became productive and needed that against Duke and Kentucky when they advanced in 2005. So I agree with you. Need to shoot better, and need it from the four and also from the wings. I mean, you need that. Charlie Bell, Morris Peterson, that's a national championship team. But your Mo Ager, Shannon Brown was a pretty good shooter. Gabe Brown does it sometimes. Rocket Watts has done it sometimes. Aaron Henry's done it sometimes. No question. You need Matt McQuaid 40% shooting from the perimeter. That would help Winston also. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The shooting needs to come around. I think the defense is coming around. I like the way they communicated on defense against Iowa with some of the three-man switches on some big switches. Where the center gets up on a high ball screen, and then the four goes and guards his man. And then after he stops the ball screen, he looks at his teammate at the four, and his four tells him who he was guarding, and he gets back over to the other guy. They used to do that a lot back in, when they had with Antonio Smith and those guys. And then, later with the 2009, 2010 era. Haven't seen it as much in recent years because I've been looking for it. This year you're seeing it. And Malik Hall doing a solid job with that. So I think that defense is coming around. I thought Rocket Rots played good defense against Maryland. Tillman has played great defense, obviously, down the stretch against Luka Garza. Bingham can pitch some innings there. Hall can pitch some innings there. Aaron Henry can play really good defense. He can play defense on a point guard and do it really well. He just has to stay locked in because the one play that started breaking the dam against Maryland when they came back 2 weeks ago was a left-handed drive by, the shooter, for a layup. That's what started the 14-0 run. Henry, who can play defense on a point guard, Michigan State's up by 7, I think, maybe, with a minute and a half to go, and he just lost focus for a second. Henry can play defense. Got to keep him focused in. He's a guy that wants to do it. He doesn't lose focus out of defiance or laziness. It just goes off for a second, and that's why Izzo snaps him to attention in different ways, sometimes in a colorful way. So the capability is there for Gabe Brown, Aaron Henry to play defense. Winston played better defense at times lately. He's not in as good a shape. I think he might be getting back to that. He gave up some drives a month ago, for different reasons, and they need him to play better defense. They all know that. He knows that, so they're working to get that. The other areas, I think they're good enough to play good defense. Rebounding is good, not great. And against some teams, they're not going to rebound like Izzo teams. All the more reason to be able to all the more reason that you need great shooting, obviously. So, big game in Maryland tomorrow. We'll see. If they beat Maryland, Maryland's top 10, 2 seed right now, leading the Big Ten. If you can go on the road and beat Maryland, then you can beat close to anybody. Maybe not anybody, but almost anybody. And that's what this team needs to know it's capable of doing. Yeah, they had Maryland beat at home, but it's different doing it on the road. So, as much as Michigan State has struggled, bounced out of the top 25, now they're back in. Bounced out of the Big Ten race. Now they're back up to being a number 2 seed in the Big Ten right now if the season were to end today. As much as the season has been a disappointment with 9 losses, you win at Maryland and maybe go win at Penn State, just like that, Michigan State will be back or close to back. I don't know if it's going to happen, but you see a lot of people nationally not ready to put dirt on Michigan State just yet. Why? Because of Izzo, because of Cassius Winston, because of Tillman. And people have seen this movie before. I'm not sure all of the parts and all the script is the same or as doable as past scripts, but it's still Michigan State. And people are, for good reason, are reluctant to count them out. The analytics, the Ken Palm rankings and some of those things rank Michigan State high because when Michigan State wins, they often rank high with winning by 15 or more, which has a lot of weight in a lot of those analytics. 313 Hitman says, I think Tucker made his best job with the new offensive coordinator, offensive line, and wide receiver coaches alone. Okay, so I thought the defensive staff is great. 313 Hitman likes the offensive stats. And 313 Hitman, it's good to have Thomas Hearns here as part of our podcast. Chicago Spartan says, Jim's back on the coffee. Actually, it's not coffee. Hate to disappoint you. Chicago Spartan says, that's something that Tucker always says. Culture. Yeah. Culture. And that's something that new coaches always say. That's a key word in the new coaching manual. 313 Hitman posting again says, the real problem was offense, though. Defense was fine last year amid 3 and outs and tiring the defense out. So the real problem was offense. Talking about last year's Michigan State football team. All right. Chicago Spartan. Did we have a shot at landing Jaron Mangum? Yeah, I had a really good shot and could have had him, but Michigan State didn't recruit him as hard as Colorado did. You know, light went out. See if it turns back on a little bit. Michigan State recruited him, but, frankly, the position coach at the time didn't recruit Jaron Mangum as hard as others did, and they kept waiting to hear from the position coach, didn't hear from him enough. Now, did they look at the film and decide that they wanted other running backs more? I'm not sure. But Kentucky came in hard late to try to get him to flip from the Colorado commitment, but he stuck with Colorado. Yeah, Michigan State would have gotten him if the running backs coach at the time had gone 100% for him. And what I don't know is whether he didn't go 100% because they evaluated other players better, or if they just didn't recruit as hard. So, yeah, he would have went to Michigan State if Michigan State would have recruited him as hard as Colorado did. 313 Hitman says, who do you see winning the starting quarterback job? I have issues with Rocky. Yeah, we've all seen Rocky Lombardi, and we've seen him do some good things at times, but have some difficulties at other times. What did you just ask? Who's the quarterback? We'll get into that a little bit more, I think. A lot of people are asking about this. I just lost my place. Let's go. I'll go back to these quickly. Let me get through the mailbag, then I'll come back to these. Let's see if I can do these quickly. Probably not, right? North Carolina Spartan, that's Brad from Charlotte, says, Jim, some folks on here have mentioned with every coaching change, there are always kids that get inspired and rise up. Yeah, can you give us a forecast on who you think might be a standout or have a new lease on life given from the new coaching staff? That was part B of the question I just asked a minute ago. I would also include Theo Day in there also, because Theo Day, I mean, the previous staff liked Theo Day, but all the quarterbacks have a new clean slate for better or worse now. So I don't know. Maul from South Philadelphia says, repping South Philly, we have our new staff in place now, given the talent on the roster and the new staff. What would a successful season be in your eyes? Record-wise, I think 7-5 would be a solid step. I know that's going to disappoint some of you guys, but that schedule is difficult, and you don't know who the quarterback is, and a lot to replace on defense. 7-5, I think, would be traction. MSU 200 says, describe how the SpartanMag staff integrates with the new staff. How do you establish a relationship to ensure that you are connected with the new coaches? Well, ensuring that we're connected, I mean, you don't really want to, it's not about, yeah, you want to be respected when you ask questions, but, you have to ask intelligent questions a little bit and maybe show that you've done some homework. Or if I don't know something about something, I'll pose a question and I'll say, look, I'm not sure if I'm seeing this right, or, help me out here. I'm kind of stupid on this subject. What's going on with this, or what? That's the way I do it. Some people probably better at it than I am. I mean, Tressel and Barnett know what we're about at SpartanMag.com, Burton too, to an extent. We want to be fair. We want to be accurate. We want to be informed. We want you people to be informed. We want credibility. We want you to know that we're going to level with you. There were times in the last 2 years when people were very upset with the coaching staff. I honestly had not arrived at that decision yet. Rico Beard, whose opinion I respect, was more outward in his negativity about the coaches. And that didn't mean that I thought I disagreed with him, but that didn't mean that I thought that didn't mean that I was right. That doesn't mean that he's wrong. So we welcome dissenting opinions. We know that a lot of you have that opinion, and we want your opinions to be reflected by some of those opinions. It would be a boring website and not as interesting a website, and not as effective or not as stimulating as a website. It wouldn't be as newsworthy if all the people at SpartanMag.com had the same opinions that I had. I would rather that we have people that work with me to have different opinions. So, we're going to try to level with you. So I level with you with what I think at the time, and by the end, I agreed that the staff, the operation had become stale. That was a good word that was on our message board. Somebody was mentioning it in the middle of the season. I was more along the lines of Mark D'Antonio. I want to wait to see all 13 games played, and then make some decisions, because a season can change really quickly. And by the end, I thought, yeah, they needed to freshen up the staff with at least 2 or 3 new hires. And that's what I expected. And I said I expected that here on the podcast. And I think D'Antonio realized that that's what was necessary. And in the end, I don't think he wanted to fire anybody. I think that's one of the reasons he said, now's a good time to get out. So essentially, by retiring, he ended up firing all of them because they're all out on the street. Tressel retained, Burton retained. So those 2 were retained. But, we're not going to try to be, I don't think it's important. I think it's important to be amicable, a friendly relationship, but I'm not going to be, guys sending Christmas cards and being, trying to be friends with coaches. I don't think that serves anybody. And there's some people that, trying to be friends, and then sometimes those people end up switching. I don't know. I think coaches are very wary about media members trying to be friends. We'll be friendly, we'll be cordial, but we've got a job to do, and we're respectful, and that's the way we operate. We'll see. Bad Blake from Metamora, Michigan says, any word on junior day top activities scheduled? With the dead period ending this weekend, I would expect several local recruits to be on campus soon. Any names you think we will see in East Lansing in the near future? It's interesting that Michigan State re-offered Andrell Anthony, the local kid out of East Lansing. Yeah, junior days, I've not seen any scheduled. I'm guessing that they're hammering that stuff out right now. Michigan State plays basketball against Ohio State next Sunday. I'm not sure if that's inside or outside of the dead period. That's a good thing to look up. I don't know right now. It's a good question. I'm not prepared on that one. MSU Goon says, I guess I might as well ask for updated Great Lakes rankings. I still have Lake Huron number 1 in my Great Lakes power rankings. I'm going to move Lake Superior up to number 2 right now, just because I like the way it's freezing. Lake Erie is up to number 4, because I like those pictures of the waves that we saw on the message board yesterday. I've got Lake Michigan down a peg for now. It'll go back up, but it's down right now. I'm reading a book. Charles Eisendrath, what's his name? I should have brought it down. Maybe next time I will. Decently interesting read, but also whether he meant to or not. Just some of the. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm not going to say anything. Anyway, I'll bring the book down maybe next time. C. Brian from Austin, Texas. Spring ball coming up, but we can't believe the starting winning quarterback is on the roster, can we? It's the primary worry I have going into the season. Similar question, Spefton from East Lansing says, enjoying the positive vibes around Tucker, but one concern for next season is quarterback. Do you think someone on the roster can surface, or do we need to hope for some portal development? Some portal developments. We can improve our offensive line with our new coach, but if we don't have a quarterback, it won't make a huge difference, in my opinion. big questions. Even the coaches are going to be wondering about that. Even the new coordinators and new offensive coordinators going to be curious to see what he has at quarterback going into spring practice. Right now, we've seen Lombardi. We saw Theo Day get out there a little bit. Peyton Thorne was someone that they were high on, who was going to have a serious shot at the job at some point in 2020. These coaches didn't recruit Thorne, so I'll have to wait and see. Transfer portal. Some people have noticed that Anthony Brown, the quarterback at Boston College, follows Mel Tucker, and Tucker followed him back. I don't know if Brown. I don't know if he's still in school at Boston College right now, or if he's already graduated, or if he intends to graduate after spring semester. Because if someone is not, you can't be a grad transfer until you graduate. So it's not like someone could all of a sudden, if you're still having to attend classes at Boston College right now in order to become a grad transfer, you can't just show up and be part of the team right now. It's not like you can come through the portal and enroll at Michigan State right now. They're halfway through spring semester, unless you've already graduated. I don't know. Maybe he's still in class, still has to finish up there, in which case he wouldn't be available to Michigan State or anyone else until June. So some of that I think is possible. I don't know if Anthony Brown is the savior. Would Michigan State like to bring somebody in to improve the talent level of the competition? Maybe so, but if you bring him in along with Noah Kim coming in, you would have 5 scholarship quarterbacks, and that's probably too many. So who's the quarterback? Is that the question? Well, C. Bryan says the starting winning quarterback is not on the roster, is it? I can't believe that's the case. That's what he says. Well, I would caution and say, Theo Day, you saw him a little bit as a redshirt freshman, not much. But think about other quarterbacks you've seen at Michigan State in the past. I mean, how good did Jim Miller look when he was a redshirt freshman? How good did Brian Hoyer look when he was a redshirt freshman? What did Kirk Cousins look like as a redshirt freshman? Pretty good in relief. Hoyer was pretty good in relief. Day hasn't had much of a chance yet. So those are NFL guys I compared him to. So I'm not one to close the door on people too soon. But you're right. It is a big question, and we don't know the answers yet. Spring practice will provide some more clues. Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights. Do you know if Coach Tucker has assigned recruiting areas to the coaching staff? If yes, who is dealing with what areas? And the answer there is that's still in the works. And like I said earlier, at Colorado, they weren't as regionally confined as maybe traditionally has been the case around here. I think you might see a mixture of that. Ted Gilmore, when he was at Wisconsin, recruited Texas, California, Georgia. I would anticipate him being involved in Georgia again. Tucker's going to be involved in Georgia. Michigan State, I heard D'Antonio had plans to give a part of Georgia to everybody on the staff. I think they were going to amplify what they were doing in Georgia. Whether or not something like that happens, Michigan State's going to be busy in Ohio, busy in Georgia. Like I said earlier, Tressel and Barnett have backgrounds in certain areas of Ohio. I would imagine it would be efficient for those guys to remain in some of those high schools where they already have connections. Other places, I think you're going to see these coaches recruit their positions nationally at various regions, and it's going to overlap more. It might not be as pronounced. That's my guess. I've not heard that for sure, just based on the Colorado model. Ben in Jenison, Michigan. I assume it's Jenison, Michigan. I'm assuming he's not posting from Jenison Fieldhouse, but he says, I'm ecstatic with the staff Tucker has put together, but now that we are through filling the positions, how do you think Coach feels about this staff? Did we land most of his guys? I'd say he feels pretty good about it. That's what he's going to say. Vince Morrow was a guy that he really went after hard early, didn't get him. So Tucker's not one to, I don't think he's going to be one to dwell on that. They moved on. So did he get all of his guys? I don't think so. But, Nick Saban didn't get all of his guys in his first staff either. I think I've talked before that he went after Ron Zook as D coordinator and didn't get him. Will Bean from Byron Center. Do you expect the media to have more access to players and coaches compared to the last couple of years? I talked about that earlier also. I would hope and expect more than last spring. Last spring and in 2019 in general, we had very little access to assistant coaches. I think part of that is because there was a lot of controversy around some of those assistant coaches and various opinions on whether those coaches should have remained on staff and what kind of scrutiny they were under. So, I mean, and after their shuffling of coaches at this time last year, for instance, I don't think They let us talk to Mark Staten all last spring. I think he spoke at Media Day in August, and that was it. We didn't get a chance to talk to him again. So 2019, from what I saw, was an all-time low for access to assistant coaches. So I would anticipate that improving. I would hope that would improve. And player access to players was good. It was the same. It's been the same for years. So that was good. Better than a lot of programs. So I appreciate Michigan State for that. I'd like to have a few more minutes of practice during preseason camp. But once the season starts, there's usually no access to practice. Back in the old days before the internet, Perlis he allowed the entire practice to be open Monday and Tuesday, but I think not on Wednesday and Thursday. And I remember being out there in practice, and late in the season, you get into November, and there'd be bats flying around. It'd be at nighttime. Lights would be on. You're watching practice at night. We could stay there that long. But again, that was before the internet. Rob South 1. Can you rank the staff by how excited we should be as fans for that position group? That's Rob from Clinton Township. Well, you know what to think about Barnett, Burton, and Tressel. I think they're pretty good. I mentioned Hazelton is interesting, and I mentioned Kapilovic is interesting. So those are the guys that interest me that I think are the other ones don't know as much what to think about them yet. The offensive coordinator did some good things with a 9-4 team at Minnesota. I think did not have an abundance of offensive talent at Minnesota or Colorado. Comes into Michigan State, you know what the quarterback situation is. So he's not going to have an abundance of proven talent there either. So that might take some time. Sparta Brett from Auburn Hills, Michigan says, what are your thoughts on Theo Day? I just mentioned a little bit about him. I'll just move along. Cherry Lane Greg from Granville. I used to do my laundry at the Cherry Lane laundromat when I lived at Holton Hall. What changes in scheme and approach do you anticipate from the offensive line? Have some of the offensive line mash unit problems been cleared for workouts, or are medical retirements likely? For Cole Chewins, not sure. In November, he was still hoping and rehabilitating with the hopes that he would come back and play in 2020. I've not heard anything new on that front yet. Kevin Jarvis, who's missed portions of the last two seasons, all of the last season and half of the 2018 season. You've probably seen him in the videos. He's involved in the winter workouts right now, so things look positive with him. Not sure about Luke Campbell. I assume he's okay. I've not heard anything bad. I'd have to look at some of the workout videos. I've not looked at them real closely to see who's out there, but Luke Campbell's a guy who's had some injury problems. Not sure where he is. I have no reason to think that he's not in solid shape health-wise. I think he finished the season, got back on the field a little bit later in the year. Can't remember. Don't have much battery time here. I got to wrap this up. Offensive line, scheme-wise, watching Colorado, inside zone like a lot of people do, double teams, trying to get some movement with the double team blocks. Saw some counter blocking, backside guard and tackle pulling. So a varied approach with the offensive line blocking. It's not like, some teams, like I remember when Penn State had Saquon Barkley and all that they did was zone block. And they just ran zone read to the point where defenses could just blitz the mesh, blitz the running back, the unblocked defender, just go right at Saquon and make the quarterback keep it. And you take Saquon right out of the game. The best offensive player in the country. He had a good senior year. I think maybe that was his junior year. That's when Moorhead was the coach there. And before the game, I was like, Penn State is not varied enough. They're not physical enough in their run game. It's too finesse-oriented. I can't remember which word I used. Then Michigan State won the game, and Franklin came out after the game and said, we are too finesse-oriented in our run game. I don't think I said finesse-oriented. I said they're not physical enough and not varied enough. Michigan State bottled up Barkley, beat Penn State. Franklin came out, said we're too finesse-oriented in the run game. I'm like, I agree, coach, and you are blowing the opportunity with the best offensive player in the country. And Joe Moorhead the year before was assistant coach of the year. They won the Big Ten, and they changed what they did halfway through the year and started doing a lot of four vertical stuff, throwing deep a lot with efficiency, and had a great year. And Moorhead was the toast of the town. The next year, I thought Moorhead was the worst offensive coordinator in the Big Ten. And that's what I said. And he got a head coaching job at Mississippi State. And I was like, what is Mississippi State thinking? First of all, I don't think he's a cultural fit for down there. Secondly, did they watch Penn State this year? Anyway, so Michigan State, Kapilovic at Colorado is not in that category. They are not a one-trick pony in terms of blocking. It's varied, which I think is important to be varied, just to so your linebackers, so the defense doesn't know where they're going to be, to make it a little foggier for them on where they're going to be hit and based on alignments and when one helmet goes up or if two go up, where the point of attack is going to be and things. I've not watched enough, but they're varied, and you hear good things about them from people that I respect. And they had a young offensive line, but they looked like an offensive line that was in the process of really getting their crap together. So scheme-wise, everybody runs zone. Not everybody pulls backside linemen all the time, especially effectively. They were doing some of that. I'll have to watch some more. JT from Michigan State says, is there going to be any sort of introductory press conference for the new assistant coaches? I know Penn State did this with Franklin's staff, and Texas did it back with Charlie Strong's guys, but also can't think of that many other cases, so I don't know how typical that is. Yeah, I don't know if there'll be an introductory press conference with all of them there. I suspect that they will sprinkle them out in spring practice, and we will get a chance to interview, two coaches on one day, and then maybe the next week 2 other coaches, then maybe the next week 2 other coaches. Sparty Party Brian from Jackson says, who is the starting quarterback against Northwestern? I would have said Rocky Lombardi if the other staff were still in place, just because I think that they were more inclined to go with a little more of a proven commodity. I wouldn't have necessarily predicted that he would hold on to the starting job long term, but I would have thought that they would have started their most experienced guy in the season opener in a Big Ten game. Still might be, I'm not sure. The new staff comes in, and Theo Day might be a little bit more like Steven Montez, the guy they had at Colorado. The guy they had at Colorado, is that their ideal? Probably not. He's not as mobile, but it's going to come down to it's an open job in the spring, open slate, and that competition has not started yet. Let's see how quick I can go through this. Cowan, thank you. I always forget that guy's name. I've got a mental block with him, the Maryland player. Okay, Chicago Spartan says, I might have skipped ahead here a little bit. I apologize. I think Jim and company did a fantastic job during the coaching search. Thanks, Chicago Spartan. Corey Ward points up to it and says, number one, I don't know if he's agreeing with that or just doing it number one. He says, at getting the third choice, who originally turned them down? Third choice, I'm not sure what you're talking about. The head coach or what? Let's see. Corey Ward also says, what you didn't do is the right information on the original hire. I'm a little bit lost here. Let me back up here a little bit. It's like Nils Deco's here. Sorry about the pause here. And if we might, I'm going to say thanks for joining us. If we lose power and it ends, I apologize, and that could happen here in a moment. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Hayden Vischer says, Comp, in your Mangum interview, Artie said something along the lines about women in his house, maybe not letting Mel Tucker in their house due to him leaving Colorado. Yeah, Artie said that he'd have to smooth that over a little bit. Artie's okay with it. He knows the business. His wife would need a little more convincing on that. She's not as forgiving. It would take some work, but I don't know. Hayden Vischer says, will that have an effect on MSU's chances with the younger Mangum, in your opinion? For now, yes, it will. They've got some work to do there. Not with Artie, but with other people in the house. Ben Moore says, get an extension cord and plug it in. I can't plug it in because I've got the plug-in going to the microphone, so that's why I can't do power at the same time. Could I get a splitter that would be power and microphone? Maybe so. I've not seen one of those yet. 313 says, B- ain't bad. I agree with that. Shadi Al-Assadi says, did you hear any exact names for defensive coordinator from Alabama or Georgia coming to Michigan State. No, I didn't. We talked about Schumann a little bit, but I'm not sure it got any further. What's going on? Chicago Spartan, Kapilovic, and Gilmore make the offensive hires a B or B+. Benmore agrees. I was just checking a notification that just came in. Got to check my watch, too, because I have to do an interview here in a few minutes. About 5 minutes. Benmore. Hayden Vischer, comp. How many screens do you have in front of you? Just 2. I've got a phone and a laptop. James Shyrock says, B+ with upside. 313 Hitman says, I like Tucker's recruiting game. It's already a plus, especially in a tough Big Ten East. Chicago Spartan says, I think Kapilovic and Gilmore have already proven themselves. 313 Hitman says, yes, they're good. I want to see them mesh with our squad. Adam Ficus says, any idea on the green-white game format this spring? Offense versus defense or competing squads? Not sure yet. Drafting by captains, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. Maybe it won't. That was a Tressel thing. Maybe Tucker will want to do it because he was involved in those Ohio State teams that kind of invented that. Not sure what it's going to be. I'm guessing, and I like ones versus ones. The game is fun when they draft and do all that, but I want to see first-string offensive line against first-string defensive line. I want to see first-string receivers against first-string defensive backs. That's what I want to see. That's not as interesting for television and most fans, but I think it's most revealing for people that want to really observe what's going on and who's playing well and who's not. Nils Deco, some people have real jobs, just got here. Yeah, sorry, Nils. 313 Hitman, I don't want to rate them too high yet. Nils says, I want a percentage on who you think will be the starting quarterback. Talked about that a minute ago. I got to think about that more. Jim Reynolds, comp. Can we get more 5-minute film session videos next season? Those were awesome. Oh, the video? Yeah. Yeah, okay, thank you. I'll look into that. I'd like to. The Untitled Beer Ranking Show. It's me, Callie Spartan. Yeah, that's the guy. I think that's the guy. There's the beer show on our website. It's fun. It's good. Keep up the good work. Connor Smith. My guess is Theo will be the starting quarterback next year. Your guess is as good as mine. Michael Brazil. Hey, comp from Owasso. I drove through Owasso for a hockey game a week or so ago. They got a nice little theater there, don't they? Used to have a racetrack, too, back in the old days, running late models. Don't mean to scare anybody about that. But anyway, 313 Hitman. I hope so, at Connor Smith. I don't know what he's talking about. Tom Kelly says, Jim, when do you sleep? You always seem to be posting at 4 a.m. That's Tom from Potter Park Zoo. Potter Park Zoo, awesome. My daughter had a Potter Park Zoo. She did the Potter Park Zoo camp a couple years ago. Loved it. When do I sleep? With the Sharks. Ben Moore, yes, the date it's made is on the inside of the driver's side door. The date it's made, or used to be. I'll have to look into that. Used to be. They used to do it that way. Don't get a car built on a Friday. Interesting. Cowan, thanks, Greg Lott. Shadi Elisade, always look forward to these live chats. Thank you. Need more of those. Thanks. Corey Ward says, what you didn't do is the right information for the original hire. Not sure which one he's talking about there. Adam Afika says, I want Theo Day to be the quarterback. Corey Ward says, one school is better than the other. That's the difference. Chicago Spartan says, I think Jim and company did a fantastic job. I already mentioned that. James Shyrock says, Twitter troll just used the 3 dots next to his name to block. Looks like we have a troll here that I didn't see. Corey sometimes handles that for us while we're live. I can't really do it. I can't do all of it at the same time. Tucker was not offered the job until Fickle backed out. True. Ben Moore says Freeman was offered over $1 million and turned it down to stay at Cincinnati. Wow, Ohio State guys strong-arming their guys. I don't know. That could be true. That could be true. I don't know it for a fact, but I've heard things like that. James Shyrock says, there's an anti-comp narrative on Twitter that trolls enjoy. I don't care. Chicago Spartan. Corey Ward says, and the San Francisco 49ers coach declined. He was third on the list, and they had to overpay him $6 million for a 5-7 guy. Okay, good luck. The 49ers guy, Robert Saleh, was not offered the job. We talked about that last week, and I raised my voice about it. People reporting that Fickle and Tucker and Saleh turned down the job. Fickle did. Tucker did not the first time. Michigan State went back after Tucker and got him. Saleh did not turn down the job. Pat Narduzzi did not turn down the job. They withdrew from consideration. Do I need to explain to people that that Michigan State reached out to them to gauge interest, and the guy at Iowa State, Matt Campbell, too. They reached out to gauge interest, and there was some initial interest from Tucker and Narduzzi. They saw that Fickle was the top guy, so they withdrew. They didn't turn down an offer. And I can't believe the people that reported it that way and the people that repeated it. I guess I don't blame the people that repeated it because they're too stupid to realize it anyway, right? Anyway, Mark Adams, Blair White, Kirk Cousins, Jack Conklin, Darquez Denard, examples besides Le'Veon in terms of not highly recruited guys. Some of those guys were walk-ons. Mark Adams, thoughts on quarterback for upcoming season. Everybody's asking about that. It's going to be an interesting spring. Spartan Pro says, could you imagine being such a loser that you have time to watch an hour-long podcast about a team you don't support just to troll? Sad life. Corey Ward. Oh, so Corey Ward is the, I don't know. I'll have to check this out. I'm not sure. As much as you guys obsess over us on Scout or the bunker and the rival site, man, please. So Corey Ward is actually not a Michigan State fan. I'm a little bit of I don't follow this stuff as closely as I should. I'm trying to block some people there. I don't know. Took a minute. All right, Ralph Albersall. What is the picture over your right shoulder? If you're still with us, I appreciate it. That is Lynn Shadnoy. Lynn Shadnoy from Michigan State back in, I think, the late 40s. If you look closely, he's got the winged helmet with this block S on the front. Spartan Pro. There's not a question in my mind that I'm more successful. These guys are going back and forth a little bit. Let me just skip ahead here. I guess we'll just go ahead and wrap this up because I'm about ready. I've got to do a phone interview. And, Lee Martin just posted Jeff Martin started following Peyton Ramsey on Twitter recently. That is interesting. You put Peyton Ramsey on this team, some things can change. Lee Martin and vice versa. So Martin followed Michigan State. That is interesting. Michael Muscari asks a random question. Is your wife a Spartan? And if so, is she a big fan? Yeah, she's a Michigan State graduate. And yeah, she's a fan. Not like a huge fan. If Michigan State loses real badly, it doesn't, she's somewhat aware of it, but not a big deal. I mean, she went to the Michigan State hockey game last week. She used to have Michigan State basketball season tickets, but not anymore. I think she's more of a basketball fan. But the whole household does not shift with Michigan State. With my son, it does. With my daughter, a little bit. Anyway, you guys don't care about that. All right, that's about it. We're going to wrap it up. Appreciate everybody checking us out here on an afternoon edition of the SpartanMag Live. Appreciate everybody joining in and the questions you asked. We'll see you next time. We might get back to a Monday night, Tuesday night in the off season. Maybe we'll do an afternoon one, a shorter one. This went long again. I guess that's just the nature of the beast. Appreciate everybody joining us. Go over to SpartanMag.com. Become a Magger. Become a subscriber. We'd love to have more people there. It helps out the whole system and the whole process, and it helps us reinvest into our coverage to get more people, more boots on the ground to provide good coverage for the subscribers. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Jim Comparoni, SpartanMag.com. We'll see you over at SpartanMag.com in the meantime. Thanks again.